really, Henry, it's amazing the number of parallels we see in the movie we're making and what the journey we're on. And I'll give you a few examples. There's a beautiful verse which says, God chose the weak and foolish things of the world to shame the wise. And let's start with David. When the anointing happened, he was not even called. So there's these 7 brothers who are bigger and stronger and more intelligent. And, the prophet has to say, well, have you got any more sons? Because it's none of these. And oh yeah, there's David. He's in the field, So the first thing I'll say about a David story, it doesn't start with somebody who's obviously gifted or talented. It's like God has got a plan. And going back to that, it's God who's the hero of the story, not David. And in our story, not us. God must be the hero of the story, So that's one thing is like I feel, and I want to talk a bit about Africa later and why Africa, but just to rip into that a little bit, I think the reason God decided to make a movie on David with a studio in Africa was because it was seen as the least of the least. In terms of the film industry, we're seen as the least, but I think that's why God chose this very reason to work here. And then on the journey, I see so many parallels as we go. I'll give you one example, and we're halfway through the movie, Henry and Ndidi, and when we were one stage through it, when David entered the Valley of Eli, I read a beautiful thing of Eugene Peterson's. He said David entered the Valley of Eli, he had a God-dominated imagination, and everyone else had a Goliath-dominated imagination. But what happened as David went to fight, with the best will in the world, the pros around him try to put on Saul's armor, like he has a breastplate, he has a sword, and as we set out on the journey, we had a lot of professionals who came in and said, Phil, we think you need this and you need that. And it was all well-intentioned. But I could feel, in fact, I already felt God speaking to me about Saul's armor and saying, Phil, you need to be authentic. I've given you a calling. You need to go with what's authentic to you and with what I've given you. So take off all this armor, which is hard to do when people who pros are putting it on you, and take it all off and go and fight with what I gave you, with what I showed you in the Zambezi River and in the bush in Africa. Take that beauty and that wildness and put it on screen. Don't be tamed. So again, I saw an allegory there with David's story and our story, and we had to put aside a lot of advice and actually go back to what we knew well from telling the Jungle Beat story and the way we did it. Because the danger with Hollywood, and there's a lot of brilliance that comes out of Hollywood, but the potential dangers, it can be very derivative and very, it's very derivative and lacks like spirit and heart often. And so I feel like that's where our story paralleled next to David's. It's like, go and fight this with a slingshot. I chose you because you've got a slingshot, because you're the least. And take that and fight the giants,